And understand what I'm sharing doesn't change any of the vision that was presented at the start of the year. It flows out of it. It's something God has really been sharing with me that I think will help shape us as a church, ready to meet a future that I think is going to be very different to what we expect. I'm going to read from John 21, verses 3 to 7. It will be on the screen. Simon Peter said to them, "I am going fishing." They said to him, "We will go with you." And they went out and got into the boat. But that night they caught nothing. Just as day was breaking, Jesus stood on the shore. Yet the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to them, "Children, do you have any fish?" They answered him, "No." He said to them, "Cast the net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some." So they cast it, and now they were not able to haul it in because of the quantity of the fish. Peter and the disciples were fishing, and they caught nothing. We go through those times in church sometimes, don't we? Where we see so little catch, so little people connecting and finding Jesus. There's times in church life where there's no catch because nobody's fishing. If we aren't fishing, how can we ever expect to have a catch? But also we do face times where we are fishing all night. Fishing and fishing and fishing, and there's no catch. The disciples had a night like that, and Jesus shouts out, "Throw your nets on the other side." Now, what difference does throwing their net out of one side of, let's be honest, a small boat than the other make in reality? The fish aren't just all cowering in one place. In the natural, it should have made no difference whatsoever. But it was their act of obedience to Jesus that made this seemingly bizarre, ineffective solution something that was effective. And I believe this is a word for us as a church. Jesus is asking us, little children, have you caught no fish? We've been fishing so hard. I don't believe, church, that our lack of catch is because we've not been fishing. And Jesus is saying, cast your nets on the other side. It's time to do something different, something new, something we've not tried before. Now, I'm going to share where I believe God is saying for that as a church. But I think as well, individually, that challenge goes out to all of us. We've been trying and trying. It's time to try something different. Something new. Something you've never tried before. It might not be what I'm sharing tonight, but I think that's on all of us. To say, if there's no fish, let's try putting the net somewhere else. A few months ago, Chris had a picture, and he wrote it down and gave it to me, and it looked a little bit like this, except, not as colourful. I've made it look nice. So he had this picture of Billingham, Stockton, Hartlepool as our churches, and then the house plants in the middle as this church planting force. And then he had this other box with question marks in it, and he didn't know what that box was. I think he had an idea that it could be something like a new physical location for a church, or a place that maybe would pop in our heads. But actually, as I saw it, I instantly knew. It was weird, instantly knew what that box was. And it unlocked something in me that I guess I never knew was in there, but straight away I thought, that's what we're going to do. Before I get to it, I would like to do a quick look at how throughout church history God has used advancements in human technology to further the work of the gospel. First of all, Roman roads. Roman roads, right back at the start of the church. The gospel spread quickly right throughout the Roman Empire. How did the gospel spread so quickly? Because the Romans built roads. They built them to move their soldiers about so that they could get their troops from one place to another quickly. And God used it to get his soldiers from one place to another quickly. These roads made it so much easier to spread the gospel. It is no coincidence that the churches that were springing up in cities along important trade routes where the roads were good. The roads were built to help the oppressors move. God used it to help the liberators move. We then spool forward in time, the organ and music. Anyone tell me when the organ was invented? Okay, I'm glad nobody knows. I was hoping nobody knew. Oh, sorry. It was going up like that, so I thought you weren't sure.
990.
990?
990.
No. It was invented by... Oh, it's a Greek name. How do you pronounce a C and a T together, Paul? By a god called Ctesibus, or some variation of that, of Alexandria. He is credited with inventing the organ in the 300 BC. 300 BC. Yet we don't see them in churches for a very long time. Most church fathers thought of the very idea of using instruments in church as childish and weak. And somehow that music would be less glorifying to God than words of praise. We don't want music in church. Are you crazy? That's for children. The organ didn't make its way into churches until 900 AD. And by the 1400s, the use of organs was established in churches right throughout Europe. So while most people link the organ and the church together, it was more than 1,100 years before the church accepted it. Before the church said, let's have that. That's a long time. But get this, we've had a wonderful time of singing together tonight. Yeah? Congregational singing doesn't come around until the Reformation. 1500s. Up until then, you did not get to go to church and sing together. That's through most of church history. It didn't exist. I find it absolutely astounding that things that are now so integral to our worship services were resisted by church for over 1,000 years. It's amazing. Amazing. They were seen as these newfangled ideas, yet now we can't picture church without them. And then, when the time came to ditch the organ, move to guitars, drums. History repeats itself. Resistance. We don't want these newfangled things in church. It's for children. It's not as respectful to God. Resisted, mistrusted, become integral. iPads. Same story, I think. Resistance at first. Mistrusted. Actually, it'd be hard to do it without them now. Let's spool forward in time again. The Gutenberg press. This is one technology that dramatically changed the world forever. It made it possible to mass print flyers and documents. The Gutenberg press was the catalyst that made it possible for the Reformation to happen. If Luther couldn't have shared his ideas so widely, the Reformation wouldn't have taken place. In fact, the church authorities were terrified of the press, specifically because the message of the reformers started getting through. Suddenly, they had this tight control on the word, and they lost it. They lost it. If it wasn't for the Gutenberg press, I dare say we'd still all be Catholic. Ultimately, the Gutenberg press allowed for mass printing of the Bible in the language of the people and unchained it from the pulpits of the church. Before the Gutenberg press, if you wanted to read the Bible, you couldn't. Not unless you were a scholar. You never read the Bible, you heard the Bible, delivered to you by your priest, in Latin. But because of the printing press, you were able to read the Bible for yourself in your own language. Can you imagine not having your own copy of the Bible? Can you imagine? Yeah, go back, what is it now? 500 years? It was unthinkable to have your own copy of the Bible. The printing press was viewed with suspicion, but it changed our relationship with the Word of God forever. Spool forward in time again. Audio amplification. Big amen from the sound team there. The microphone was invented in the 1870s. Previous to this, in a big building, you had to rely on very good acoustics for people to hear you. In fact, when you go into those big old cathedrals, they're designed in such a way to be acoustically sound. And again in church, the question was, why would we need microphones? Why would we need them? You know, they wouldn't find their way into churches for another 50 years. It wasn't until the 1920s that they became commonplace. And the reaction is, again, we've gone 2,000 years nearly without these. Why would we need them? But the microphone allowed the mass evangelistic events, the likes of which would never have been possible without them. No microphone, no Billy Graham filling football stadiums. Does not happen without one of these. They've gone from, why would we need that in church, to the expectation that you have those in church. Otherwise, somebody at the back can't hear you. Sorry, otherwise somebody at the back can't hear you right. Spool forward again. The car. It's amazing to think. Self-powered road vehicles changed the church. In the early 900s, it completely changed society. Distance is not the thing it used to be. I remember my dad telling me, I hope this is accurate. Not that you've said it wrong, that I've remembered it wrong. When he was younger, his aunt and uncle moved from the Seaham area to Billingham because he got a job at ICI. And that whole part of the family moved to Billingham. And for my dad, he said it was like they'd moved to the other end of the country in terms of the effect. And they had cars back then, but not as many. But there was no A19 as such as we have it now. The improvements in cars over the years. But the idea of going from Seaham to Billingham was an epic journey. I went to Merton last week to meet somebody for coffee and thought nothing of it, except for the price of the coffee. Before the car, you went to the church near you. In your village, in your town. And if it was a good church that taught the Word of God, you would thrive. And if it wasn't, what could you do? Thumb a lift? No cars. The car, and of course the bus and the train, brought us choice. We didn't have to settle for a dead church anymore. You could find another church. Just think of the freedom that offered. Just for a moment, picture where you live. Imagine for a moment you could only attend the church that you could walk to. I mean, yeah, it'd be here for me as well, but just imagine for a moment. When I started coming here, I lived in Peterlee. I never would have come here. Oh, I'd have been stuck in a church in Peterlee, sorry. I couldn't resist. Oh dear. Sorry, I was being cheeky there and that might have come across offensive. But this happens because of the car. Otherwise, this choice would not exist. With a lot of these technologies, the pattern is exactly the same. An advance is created. It becomes mass-produced and popular in the general public. The church isn't sure about it. The church mistrusts it. The church eventually adopts it. And the church is transformed into a new day that I can't ever imagine going back from. Time and again. Time and again. I believe God uses what man creates. Sometimes man even creates these things with bad intent, like Rome, to move their soldiers about. But God can use them for the furtherment of the gospel. I believe we are at another one of these turning points in the world. Whilst we may be unsure about it, we may mistrust it, we may want to resist it, we may have felt we were fine without it. It may even bring a lot of oppression. I believe God is going to propel the church into a new era. And should the Lord tarry, because there might not be much of a new era coming, apart from the new era. Should the Lord tarry, I believe the church history books will look back at two very significant dates, the same way we look at Roman roads and the printing press. Those dates are 2006 to 7 and 2020. In this time, a number of events took place that led to a seismic shift in society. In 2007, the first iPhone was released. People didn't really expect it to change anything. But now, we are all walking around with the internet in our pockets. When I say all, I say most. Every phone since that day has been a development of or a response to that. It's changed the way people shop, the way an entire generation socializes, the way we communicate. This happened at the same time as some other significant events the previous year. The year before, Google bought YouTube, which for some reason has not gone on there.
It was taken down by YouTube.
Oh dear. Okay. Well, I guess you know where I'm going next after this. Google bought YouTube. And something that was originally a way of just sharing funny videos and memories became this juggernaut that democratized video as a medium. Beforehand, if you wanted to share, let's say, a gospel message around the world, it would have cost you a lot of money. I mean, I worked for years, since 1999, I was working at God TV. And the greatest challenge God TV always faced was the cost of distribution. Satellite fees, technology. It was this mammoth amount of money that was constantly in need. Otherwise, they'd go off the air. I mean, I know some of their fundraising was less than desirable. But the pressure to constantly feed that distribution network was immense. Absolutely immense. And at that point in time, that was the only way to get the message into somebody's home. There was no other way to do it. If you wanted to reach China, you had to make deals with Chinese satellite networks, Chinese distribution networks. And guess what? They all wanted a bit of that. People used to ask me all the time, why is God TV not on Freeview? And the answer was, it costs a fortune. There's a reason TBN was on Freeview when that first came about. It's because TBN had a lot of that. Now, if you buy a new TV, it comes with YouTube pre-installed. Already on. And it doesn't cost people anything to put stuff on there. Before, only the rich could send a message around the world. Now, anybody can. Now, that has dangers, but it also has opportunity. Distribution has been settled and democratized. Now, getting that message to somebody is another question. It'll be available to make sure they come across it. That's another thing entirely. But the potential is anything you put online now can be seen by anybody in the world, with the possible exception of China, which locks theirs down a bit. Well, a lot. And North Korea, they probably struggle as well. It has transformed media. I tell you what, when I started working in media to when I left God TV, I didn't recognize the environment anymore. It had changed so much in a few years. You know, the younger generation today, they don't really watch TV. Not so much. They watch YouTube. They're glued to their tablets. That's just the reality of the world we're in. We can deny it, we can resist it. It's still that's the way the world is. Also, in 2006, the next thing, which you already know, was that Mark Zuckerberg opened up Facebook membership beyond just university students, where it began, to everybody over the age of 13. And since then, it has changed the way people connect with each other. I remember the day my mum joined Facebook. I thought, well, that's everywhere now. It has changed the way people connect with each other. Karen, how many people wished you happy birthday on Facebook today?
Do you know what? I can't even scroll down, not a lyrics. I'll see it and then I'll go to think it and then I kind of, yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's transformed. I mean, the idea of, I make a deliberate thing. I never say happy birthday to someone on Facebook now. I always try and text them instead because I feel like that stands me above the crowd. No, I think it has more value other than Facebook told me it's your birthday. But isn't it weird? It's now just become a thing. You've got enough friends. Cliff, I know you've got enough friends. You must be doing it every day. Saying happy birthday to someone. It's changed politics. I mean, the last couple of elections have really been decided on social media. It has shifted the whole fabric of society, often in some very not nice ways. Speaking of not nice ways, also in 2006, Twitter was founded. That was their original logo, and now known as X. It has had an effect on every election and important social discussion since. I mean, I don't want to get into political things, but the January 6th thing does not happen without Twitter. All of these things happened within a year of each other. And society has been irreversibly changed. We may not like them, but we can't deny their effect has been absolutely seismic. Even at church, you know. No longer you just have to worry about what the church up the road is maybe saying that's dodgy. You've got to worry about what a church across the world is saying that's potentially dodgy. Pastorally wise, that's very hard. Very hard. You have no idea how many videos I get sent. What do you think of this? And this isn't to say don't do it, but it's a lot. But it just shows how things have changed. It used to be you'd read something and you were like, oh, I'm not sure about that. And now it's just everywhere. The world does everything online. I've been unwell the past few weeks. Could I get the doctors on the phone? No. If I couldn't get online by just after 8 o'clock in the morning, I had to wait until the next day and try again. You can't even book a doctor's appointment without a device. And like it or not, this is where the world is going. But in churches, we've done what we did in the past. We've resisted it. And we've mistrusted it. Until 2020 happened. I genuinely believe God used this lockdown time. I don't believe he caused it, but I believe he used it to propel the church forward in a direction the church would not have chosen on its own. Just like when persecution hit Jerusalem and the church got out of Jerusalem and started to get the message out there. They wouldn't have chose to do that on their own. I believe 2020 was that for the church. Suddenly we had no option but to connect with each other in this online world. And the front doors of the church were blown off. The significance of the online world to the church, I believe, is no less than the Roman roads, getting the gospel quickly to new places. The organ, in that it's existed for some time but resisted, but I believe one day will be seen as essential. The printing press, which opened up the word to people in any location, at any time. As the microphone, allowing the word to reach vast numbers of people all at once. And the car, where your location no longer determines the access you have to church. The trouble was, once in-person services resumed properly back in 2021, a lot of the churches immediately pulled back from doing anything online. We talked about it, didn't we? We had the discussion. And I couldn't do it. Because I believe something has fundamentally changed and there's no going back. God has propelled us forward into something new. And it's our responsibility, church, to find ways for that to serve the gospel. You know, John Wesley took the gospel all around this country. What a man. You know, if I have a list of people I want to meet in heaven, he's right near the top. I imagine there's going to be a queue though, but in his lifetime, he traveled 250,000 miles on horseback. That is enough to go around the earth 10 times. Now I tried to do some calculations here. If his horse was cantering rather than galloping, he was probably doing around about 15 miles an hour maximum. That means he spent at least, if he was traveling 24 hours a day, non-stop, around 694 days just traveling. Imagine if he hadn't had to travel. He preached 40,000 sermons. 40,000. Imagine what that guy could have done online. Same horse. I mean, the horse is a hero as well. So where does this lead us? Well, I think you know. What is that question mark? What is the new location? Our new location is everywhere. Or in other words, online. I'd like to introduce you tonight to Rise, our new church plant, our online church plant. This is going to be a specific online church plant designed to reach the gospel anywhere and everywhere, but also to try and bring the community aspect of the church, because that's my favourite part, to those who already join us online and anyone who joins us online. Because at the moment, the community part doesn't exist online with church. And that's a hard nut to crack. Those who watch us online at the moment, hello by the way, they're not watching live, but we'll put this out afterwards. Looking at the regularity of the viewing numbers, it's consistent, which leads me to believe it's the same people regularly watching online. They get to see the streamed meetings, they get other content, but what they haven't got is community. The life of being part of a body. And with Rise, we want to make sure that those who attend online feel just as much a part of us as everybody else. Now, first of all, let me tell you what this isn't. This is not a replacement of anything physical or any model of planting other than the house plants that already exist. None of that changes. Listen, church, this isn't us abandoning the physical in no way, shape or form. This isn't us taking our eyes off the physical meetings or our physical locations. What it is a new opportunity. This won't divert us from doing anything that we're doing in person, any physical church that we do. It is not to diminish that. Physical location does not become less important. But it's a specific, targeted building of a church community that will not be limited by geography. The two things really should complement each other. This is a building of the church for the future. It must be community, otherwise it's not church. It must be teaching, otherwise it's not church. It must have worship, otherwise it's not church. And it must be outreach, otherwise it's not church. It must reflect everything we are as a church. Now, let me put this disclaimer out to those of you who are a little bit like, I don't know. You don't have to be part of it if you don't want to be. It will not diminish anything that we've got going on and have no negative effect on you at all. It's not mandatory. It's a plant. Just like if you don't go to Hartlepool or you don't attend our Stockton meetings, it doesn't affect you. Yeah? It's not a change in focus. If we go back to our metaphor from January, it's bringing in a new ship for the fleet. It's casting the net on the net. I mean on the other side. Some questions do come up. Why do this? Well, this, for many, is the new front door to church. Even today, we have people who've joined us on a Sunday morning who first found us online. The front door for me is a door that people can see, and if they want, if they're looking, if they're seeking God, they know if they come through that door, there's an opportunity. This is a new front door for people who are seeking, for people who are looking for a church. It becomes that point of connection. You know, Jesus went to the people who were seeking. He taught in the synagogues. Matthew 4, verse 23. It says, and he went throughout Galilee, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom and healing every disease. By the way, wouldn't that be amazing to have that happen virtually as well? Hey, God's not limited by space. and every affliction from among the people. Jesus went in the synagogues where there were people who were looking for God. Paul did the same. Acts 17:10. The brothers immediately sent Paul and Silas away by night to Berea. When he arrived, they went into the Jewish synagogue. They looked for people who wanted to worship God. That's the front door. We need to find ways to reach those who are searching, no matter where they are. But we also need to find the gospel reaching people who aren't searching. So as well as the new front door, it is also the new marketplace. In the ancient world, the marketplace was where people gathered. They shopped, they exchanged views, they debated. It was the bustling heart of community. And if anyone's been to Middlesbrough Town Centre recently, you will realise it is no longer the bustling heart of the community. Not just Middlesbrough, I'm sure. Paul went out into the marketplace to reach people who would not have heard if he hadn't have gone out there. Acts 17, verses 16 to 17. Now while Paul was waiting for them at Athens, his spirit was provoked within him, as he saw the city was full of idols. So he reasoned in the synagogue with the Jews and the devout persons, and in the marketplace, and I love the way this is phrased, every day with those who happened to be there. Those who just happened to be there. Paul went where the people were. Where are people spending most of their time now? Sorry, I've just got some notifications to clear. 1 second. Ooh. Paul went where the people were. Most of the stuff you'll come on social media, you just happen upon because somebody shared it. Those who just happened to be there. With online, we also have the opportunity to reach the young, because the digital world is the world they live in. But also, a lot of older people who find it harder to leave the house also should be considered. And it is the way a lot of the people who view us each Sunday are people who can't physically come. I'm trying not to look at anyone specific, but I see you bustling with my mum and dad there.
Less mobile.
Less mobile. Oh, yes, okay. Sorry, I thought they were just saying how old they were. Also, there are people, listen, people have busy lives nowadays. There's more pressure on people to work and work and work than there's ever been before. People, and let's be honest, sometimes we invite people. I know Jill's experienced this, invite after invite, and something comes up, they can't make it. They need to be reached just as much as somebody who can physically make it here. The online world is used for so many bad things, but we can use it for good. And suddenly, there is no geographical limitation on becoming part of the life of the church. If we can work out the community aspects, if we can build a cohesive online community where iron sharpens iron, there's no limits to where you live. Now let me repeat, in no way does this minimize or replace in person, but this opens the church doors wider than they've ever been opened before. I want to see every department in church have an online reflection. You know, there's a wonderful thing that you read about in the early church in Acts, and we know this passage well, I'm sure, Acts 2:42 to 47. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and prayers. And awe came upon every soul. And many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. And all who believed were together and had all things in common. And they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all. We don't preach on that bit much. As any had need. And day by day, attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes, they received their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to their number, day by day, those who were being saved. Now I know we know this passage well, and often we focus on certain parts of it, signs and wonders, people being saved every day. I don't want to undercut any of that, but there's a bit we don't often focus on that has just as much effect. And one of it is this: the Lord added to their number day by day. How? They were meeting every day. Every day there was a connection point at the temple and in their homes, gathering and scattering. Now, that's a hard thing, but church was every day. People could only be saved every day if church was every day, in some form. That's a hard thing to do today when we rely on being here in person. A lot. I mean, who could afford, for those who live a little further away, to drive here every day? And we've got lots of good things going on. We've got prayer meetings, we've got Oasis, we've got life groups, we've got Sunday services, we've got youth groups. But individuals can only physically attend so much before you end up collapsing, yes? But digitally, we can have touch points every single day. We can be church every day, in person or online. Hybrid church. Not just physical, not just digital, but both. I want to ensure that every day people can connect. People can find Jesus. People can hear a message of hope. And we can achieve this by taking advantage of the online world. Now here's a question. How? Well, that's going to be the journey. Because I'll be honest, I have some sketches in my head. I don't have the whole picture. I'm not going to pretend I do. I have some early ideas. For example, Good News Today already exists. This will become part of Rise. This is a devotional time that takes place every day. Now, at the moment, it happens every weekday. Next year, I want this to be every single day of the week. If we can. But also, I've had some conversations with Lisa, and we are hoping to launch a kids' bedtime story once a week on Facebook, the sort of thing that you would see on CBeebies on a Friday night. Nice and, a thought for the children. And then also, adding into that, youth devotional videos, sort of version of Good News Today for the youth. Community side, that's a tricky one. And there's a lot to explore. That's why I put WhatsApp groups with a question mark. Because this is the hard bit to crack. I am going to make it a matter of priority to work out how we can do this. But one way we've looked at is WhatsApp groups. You can have WhatsApp communities where everything comes under this banner of new life, and you can have separate groups. So you can have a life group discussion. So you could have all your life groups could have a discussion. You could have, I know there's a worship one at the moment and a tech team one. We could fold those into it. But also for the people who are engaging just online, they could have their own as well, where they can talk to each other. I don't know. This is the hard bit. I'm not going to lie. This is the one that's tough to crack. But I believe it's possible. There's this tendency in it. Are we okay for doing okay for time? No one's flagging yet, are they? I am getting close to the end, I promise. We have this tendency sometimes to think of online interactions as not real. Now, they're definitely different to in person. Definitely. But let me ask you a question. And I'm not going to pick names on this, I'll do hypotheticals. Let's say a guy is flirting with a woman via text message. And his wife sees the text. And he says to her, "Why are you so upset? It's not real." Do we believe him? No. It is absolutely real. It is just as much a breaking of his marriage vow than flirting in person. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, let's say young kid is getting bullied via Facebook. Message after message, taunting and torturing them. Who would turn to that child and say, "Buck up, it's not real, it's online"? It's real. Listen, it's real for the negative and it's real for the positive. It might be different, but it is real. So if we can connect in that way positively, it is just as real. I mean, you guys here, how many of the conversations where you're asking me for guidance are via text? It's no less real. It's actually really helpful because I can think about what I'm saying before I say it. It's real. So we need to be able to ensure that online connection is real. Because if it's just watching content, if it's just watching the live stream, it's not church. We need to engage people. There will also be a very specific online-only meeting that takes place each week. It'll have Bible teaching, it'll have worship. It'll be proper church, there'll be an opportunity for an offering. This isn't an extra thing that I'm asking everybody in church to be part of and watch. This is for online audience. That said, it's available to anyone who wants it. This will be the centerpiece, the main focus of the week for the church plant, because a church plant needs to have its own meeting. Yes? If Hartlepool didn't have its own meeting, it wouldn't be a plant. It'd be some outreach work. If Stockton didn't have its own meeting, they wouldn't have their own identity. Yeah? A church plant needs its own meeting. So it will have its own meeting. It will not be on a Sunday because Sundays are busy enough and we already have a live stream that anyone can watch. It will be a midweek meeting, probably on a Wednesday, because we don't do anything else on a Wednesday at the moment. And it doesn't take the focus. But this is for those who don't live near us but consider us their church. We want them to feel as part of this as anybody else does. I think of people like, and I know you're probably watching, so I hope you don't mind me mentioning you by name, but Gladys, or Dave, Iris. It's important to them. But they need to feel as part of the community too. And it's a shame for them not to have that. It really is a shame for them not to have that. So we want to create the community side. We want to give them their own identity. We also need to find ways to include this wider community into our prayer times. Now, weirdly enough, that happened this week. Because there was somebody who couldn't get here, and they messaged me and said, the initial thought was, can they call on the phone and be in the meeting? But we were able to stream the meeting to them. So they were able, private stream, but we were able to do that. But hey, we can open that up to people who would love to be here but can't. Who would love to be praying with us, and at some point we'll work out how to make that so they can pray too. That'd be wonderful. We also need to make sure that there's worship available, because without worship, it's not church. I've already started working on this. I know some people will have noticed on our YouTube page, there's a whole playlist of worship music now. Some from Chris and Karen, some from my mum and dad, and on Monday, one from Fee. which will be excellent. But we must, and that's allowing people to have worship and being able to select a song during their devotional times whenever they want it. I'd love to see that expand. IFC one day is having a band that's just an online band. The wonderful thing about doing it online is you get a proper chance to mix it afterwards, which is so much fun. This is something that will grow as it develops. And again, I have an inkling of some of it, but I don't know for sure, because I think technology is about to leap forward in ways we haven't fully realized yet. I believe society is going to change in ways we haven't expected yet. And we need to be ready for that. But church, we must get past any initial fear, rejection of this new world, and embrace the opportunity it presents for the gospel. Now, what does this need from you? Well, this is not a change in direction as a church. I've said that 3 times now, so it's definitely true. If this isn't for you, you will not be left behind. This is a new location, a new plant. But the first thing that everybody can do is pray. Pray, 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 pray. Pray for direction. Pray for wisdom. Pray for ideas. Pray for breakthrough. Pray for opportunity. But whether or not you're involved at all, there's something you can all do right now. Well, not right now. This week. When you watch anything we do on YouTube, hit one of those buttons, except for the thumbs down. If you hit that thumbs up button, or you press subscribe, or you press notify me. You know, if you press subscribe and notify me, you'll get a little ping every time there's something appears on the church's YouTube. Very handy.
Press the bell thing as well.
If you hit subscribe, it'll give you the option to press a bell. Yeah.
Just for those who don't know that.
Yeah. It'll give you, when you see it's got a little arrow pointing down. When you click on that, I'll give you some options. Hit the one with a bell. Now, do this not just so that the person preaching has their ego stoked, but because this is how YouTube works. When a video is liked, or has a comment on it, or creates a subscription on the channel, their algorithm goes, people are engaging with this, we'll give it to more people. That's how it works. So every time you press like, you're not, even if you don't like it, what you're doing is enabling more people to see it. That's how it works. And the other thing we need is people. We need a team. We're going to need a producer, overseers, online pastoral care, editors, presenters, people who can contribute content. It is going to take a team of people to see this realized. And here's the one thing I don't want it to do. Distract me from everything else we've got going on. So it's going to need a team or it's not going to work. It won't happen without a dedicated team. Church, let's cast our nets on the other side. Let's get the message out to the highways and the byways. Let's build a community of those who are already engaging with us but live far away. There's people who are watching every week. Some lady who lives in Southampton. Someone lives in Scotland. Let's engage them. Wouldn't it be amazing if the people who live further away want to start a house plant and there's a little version of new life growing in these far-flung places? So in the new year, we're going to start small. We've got the bedtime devotionals. I'd like to see those start early in the new year. By Easter, I'd like the Wednesday night up and running. But if we get down to this, what I want is church without borders. Church without geographical limitations. Church that can be in anybody's home. You know, we've prayer walked these streets for years. I've prayer walked these streets and looked in all the houses and thought, how do we get past that wall? The opportunity is now available to do that. Church with connection every day, to take the gospel further than we've ever taken it, to build a community larger than we've ever had, to make church bigger than in how we think of it, Because it's not about this one place. It's not about the 3 places. It's about reaching everyone, everywhere, because that's who Jesus came for. My mum sent me this picture today, and it just made me think. And it's Jesus saying, you're saying they want me to squeeze myself into that? And stay there? Forever? Jesus is bigger. And Jesus came for everyone. This isn't about today. This isn't about this year. This isn't necessarily about next year. This is about building a church for the future. Amen? In the coming weeks, we'll lay out how people can get involved. But I'm excited. I'm excited because I think there's opportunity to reach people that we've never reached before.